Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Lippett. I'm an artist, writer and lecturer and the author of the graphic novel A Puff of Smoke that details my 11-year journey to diagnosis. I was born into a bustling, fun household as a healthy baby in 1984. Got on with my family very well, I had a very vibrant, full life. And then when my little sister was born in 1992, I started feeling different. I started falling over, I had headaches and felt very unwell. And at first my mum thought that maybe I was trying to get attention. I wasn't coping in dancing classes anymore and I was struggling at brownies, and eventually my mum and dad really started to notice that there was something wrong with me. They took me to the doctors. My GP said that I immediately needed to go to the hospital, that there's something seriously wrong. By the time I got to the hospital, things had gone from bad to worse and my left side of my body had started moving around on its own. They couldn't help me at the local hospital, so they took me to Birmingham Children's Hospital, where after 6 weeks they diagnosed me with hemiplegia chorea, an involuntary movement disorder. I was put on a very heavy dosages of medication and sent back home. And I couldn't walk anymore. Mum and Dad would push me in my chair. My siblings had a lot of fun dragging me around. I couldn't go to school for about 6 months, but eventually I learnt to walk again and the medication controlled the symptoms a bit better. And I started to go back to school part-time. Meanwhile, I started getting lots of urine infections and no one was quite sure what was going on, so I was having quite a lot of tests to try and figure this out. And I was still struggling neurologically with my leftover symptoms and side effects from the medication. And I was struggling at school. I was very frustrated that I'd been put into the lower groups and that I wasn't in the top groups anymore with my friends. We were juggling appointments, neurological appointments and nephrology appointments. I was going for kidney scans and testing urine and blood samples, and they really didn't know what was going to happen next. About 12 years old I started high school, and my nephrologist said we needed to have a biopsy on my kidneys to see what was really going on, as the urine infections weren't going away and there was very high amounts of protein in my urine. Mum took me to have my biopsy and I was hopeful that they could finally find an answer to what was going on. I was diagnosed with focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, a rare kidney disease that affects 1 in 17,000 people in the UK. They needed to treat the disease immediately and there were 3 options that I could choose from. I chose the option with the least side effects, and I was put on a course of cyclophosphamide, which meant that at the age of 13 I would have to go in for intravenous treatment and lose some of my hair, which at the time was quite devastating going through puberty. But I think compared to what I would have had to have gone through, other children that I saw going through, it was probably the best option at that time. And with the support of my family and my small group of friends at school, it didn't really seem that bad. The treatment worked and I was able to live stably after this point with my kidneys. I was monitored regularly and eventually went on to some medication that stabilised my condition. Unfortunately, after my experience of diagnosis with focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, my neurological symptoms came back with a vengeance, and I was experiencing extreme migraines and tingling down the left-hand side of my body, and I was back to going to the neurologist once a month. The treatment wasn't really working. I kept going back for tests after tests after tests, and nothing came back conclusive. Every time I went to see my doctor, I would be put on a different medication with really extreme side effects, and I was missing a lot of school. At the age of 15, I was on so many different medications that my parents were so concerned they took all of the medicines to the pharmacy and asked my pharmacist if it was the medication that was making me feel so terrible. I hadn't been to school in weeks. The pharmacist said that I was on such high dosages that it was actually meant for an adult. I needed to get in touch with a doctor immediately to be weaned off the medication that I was on. I was admitted to Birmingham Children's Hospital during my GCSE year. I was slowly weaned off my medication over about 6 weeks. In a way, it was better at the hospital school because it gave you perspective. There was people that were a lot worse than you and people on the ward that were just like you, and no one was any different. Everyone was having their own struggles. So there was some kind of beautiful connection that I could have with the kids at the hospital that I couldn't relate to at school. Eventually I was weaned off the medication and I did feel better, despite still having the same migraines and pains that I was experiencing. And I went back to school. It was a very, very stressful time, trying to still stay at school and pass my GCSEs whilst being so ill and not knowing what was wrong with me. They knew that it wasn't the career that had come back that was in control and hadn't come back. They just didn't know why I was experiencing these symptoms. At the age of 16, I had another in a long line of MRI scans that revealed that the reason that I'd had a career at the age of 7 was because I'd actually had a stroke at the age of 7 that caused the career. The doctors looked at my case with fresh eyes, ran more tests, different tests, and after an angiogram at the age of 17, I was diagnosed with the very rare disease Moya Moya, which affects 1 in 1 million people in the UK. Moya Moya is a condition in which the blood vessels that supply blood to my brain become narrowed, and this limits the blood to the brain and puts me at risk of stroke. Those symptoms that I was experiencing were where the blood was getting stuck, and the doctors thought that I would be a good case for the surgery that they could offer me that would hopefully improve my life. The surgery that was offered was vascular bypass surgery. Essentially, it's like a revascularisation of the heart, so redirecting the blood flow. I immediately decided that I would do it. I wanted a better life and I wanted to get well. At the age of 18 years old, I went to Great Ormond Street and I had the surgery. After about 7 or 8 hours, I came round. They said it was very successful. And I was able to go on then to university and study and live a very, very full life.
I always knew at the back of my mind that I had, at any point, my doctors always said, you can be fine for years and years and years, and then suddenly that's it. At the same time, I think I just imagined it would be when I was in my 50s or something. They sent me to have an ultrasound of my kidneys to see what was going on, and it took ages because they couldn't find them. They were just like, and the woman was going, I never give up. She was just like, we'll give it one more chance. And I kind of just like was lying there going, this is probably a really bad sign. Like, this isn't good. They can't find them. And then that's like kind of when I knew like it was probably not a good sign. Like, in a way, you kind of want something that people can understand. You say nephrotic relapse, or even if you say like a relapse of kidney disease, it's confusing because people are like, well, you've got bad kidneys, why don't you just get a new kidney? When it's bad, when I'm in pain, and like it's just so frustrating, and my mood swings are just quite extreme. I'm angry at myself for beating myself up when I was well for not doing things and stuff now. Like I think back at that and go, you're an absolute idiot. Why were you so horrible to yourself? I think, and originally when I had found out I had the relapse, I thought, oh, I'll take the medication, I'll feel better, and then I'll go back to being me again and do everything I was doing before. And now, now I'm in the mix of it. It's like, oh, right, no, that's not going to happen, because it's changed now. Everything's changed. Like, it's not going to be over and done with. They're going to have to monitor me. I'm not going to be just going to the hospital once a year anymore. And I might have a second relapse quite close after this one. I don't know what's going to happen, or it could be, it could be back. Or it might not work. Like, there's all these variables, and I think everyone talks a lot about the moment about uncertainty, not being able to plan anything. And I think I need to accept that I can't plan this either. Like, my favourite thing at the moment is just hanging out with all the dogs on the beach. Just watching the dogs and watching the swimmers. And that's really nice. And exploring the or just the sea life. Like, I saw a starfish yesterday. It was really cool.
It's been about 16 years since I had my surgery for Moya Moya, and the years afterwards have always been monitored, and I had been taking medication daily but without side effects, and so my life has been fairly stable, attending the hospital 2 or 3 times a year for both my kidney disease and my neurological disease, which has been really manageable. The relapse of my kidney disease this year has reminded me how uncertain living with chronic illness is, and how dramatically life can change. 1 minute I'm taking my health for granted, running marathons, travelling with work as an artist and writer, lecturing at university and publishing a second graphic novel with Penguin. And then suddenly overnight, here I am with deteriorated kidney function. The disease is back and I'm suffering on high dosages. A life I thought was back in the past, but it's different now. I'm an adult, and my mum and dad aren't my carers anymore. I feel I have to be even stronger now, but it is quite hard. In a funny way, the only silver lining is the pandemic. I'm able to still teach my students as we're teaching remotely online, and if I were on campus, I wouldn't be able to get there in my condition, especially as I'm shielding. It's something that gives me connection to the outside world and happiness and distraction. And I also don't feel jealous that I'm missing out like I did when I was a child, because we're all at home, restricted, and there's something comforting in that. And taking pleasure in the smaller things, walking around my new home of Portobello in Edinburgh, and just trying to remain hopeful that this is just temporary, that it's going to pass.